Clarity wins. Why visibility in an AI-driven search world is about interpretation, not ranking.
A contractor said something to me recently. He said, "My competitor has more reviews. That's why I'm losing jobs." I hear that a lot, and sometimes it's true, but more often it's not the whole story, because we are no longer operating in a search environment that simply counts reviews or compares star ratings. We're operating in an environment that interprets businesses. AI systems don't just rank you, they model you. They analyze your website, your categories, your reviews, your responses, your activity, your presence across the web, and they build a representation of what you specialize in. Not what you say you do, not what you could do, what you consistently reinforce. And that shift changes everything. Most home service businesses still think visibility is about a few surface metrics, more five-star reviews, better map rankings, posting more often, tweaking keywords. But ranking is an output. Clarity is the input. If your signals are broad, your interpretation becomes broad. If your reinforcement is inconsistent, your model weakens. If your ecosystem tells slightly different stories in different places, ambiguity widens, and generic profiles compete for generic jobs. That's the shift. You are not just listed, you are modeled. AI systems are predicting where you belong in search results based on pattern recognition. They are grouping businesses, comparing language, reinforcing confidence signals, and surfacing options based on how clearly they understand what you do. Interpretation determines visibility. And in an AI-driven search world, clarity wins. You're already in it. Your business is already being interpreted. The only question is whether that interpretation is deliberate. Because in an AI-driven search world, clarity isn't optional. It's leverage. Clarity wins.
AI interpretation works first. Why visibility shifts before you notice it.
I once worked with a contractor who told me, "I don't understand it. We've been doing this for 20 years. We've got great reviews, but lately the calls feel different." He wasn't getting fewer calls, he was getting broader ones, smaller jobs, lower margin work, more price shoppers. Nothing dramatic had changed in his business, but something had changed in how his business was being interpreted. That's the shift most contractors haven't fully grasped yet. AI systems are not ranking you the way search engines used to. They're interpreting you. They're building an internal model of what your business specializes in. They're asking, what problems does this company consistently solve? Where do they operate most confidently? How should they be categorized? What intent should they be matched with? That model is built from signals. Your website, your Google business profile, your reviews, your responses, your activity, your external mentions. AI systems look for patterns, repetition, consistency, alignment. If those patterns are tight, the interpretation becomes specific. If those patterns are broad, the interpretation becomes broad. And broad interpretation leads to broad competition. Generic profiles compete for generic jobs. Once you understand that you're being modeled, not just listed, you start thinking differently. You stop chasing surface metrics. You start aligning structure. Interpretation determines visibility. Clarity wins.
Your website is sending mixed signals. Why unclear messaging weakens interpretation before ranking even begins.
I once worked with an HVAC contractor who had been in business for over 20 years. Great reputation, strong team, solid reviews. When I pulled up his website, I asked him a simple question. If I didn't already know what you do, what would I think you specialize in? He looked at the homepage and paused. The headline said, "Quality service you can trust." Underneath that, it listed heating, cooling, indoor air quality, commercial services, residential services, maintenance plans, new installs, repairs. None of it was wrong, but none of it was dominant. That's when he realized something. His website didn't define him, it described him. And AI systems don't reward description. They reward clarity. Your website is not just a brochure, it's a signal source. AI systems scan your website looking for repetition, emphasis, and hierarchy. They're asking, what does this business primarily do? What service appears most important? What problem is reinforced most clearly? What geography is emphasized? If your website says, "We do everything," the AI model builds a broad interpretation. If your homepage spreads equal emphasis across 10 services, the model distributes confidence across 10 services. That feels safe, but it's weak. Now imagine two HVAC companies again. Company A's homepage emphasizes emergency AC repair repeatedly. Clear headline, clear subheading, clear supporting language. Multiple mentions tied to service areas. Company B lists all HVAC services equally with no dominant emphasis. Both technically offer emergency AC repair, but only one reinforces it strongly. When someone searches for emergency AC repair near me, which business do you think the AI model feels more confident surfacing? Confidence is built from emphasis. Emphasis is built from repetition. Repetition creates pattern strength. Pattern strength increases interpretive clarity. Most contractor websites are built for completeness, not specialization. They want to show everything they can do. But in an AI-driven search world, specialization surfaces more effectively than breadth. If your website messaging is broad, your model becomes broad. And broad models compete broadly. Generic profiles compete for generic jobs. Here's the shift. Your website shouldn't try to communicate everything. It should reinforce what you want more of. That doesn't mean hiding services. It means structuring emphasis. Clear headline, clear service focus, clear geographic alignment, clear repetition. Because AI systems don't just read your site, they model it. If your Google business profile emphasizes emergency plumbing, but your website talks mostly about remodeling, that's signal conflict. When signals conflict, confidence drops. And when confidence drops, visibility narrows. Small inconsistencies feel harmless, but layered over time, they dilute specialization. Clarity reduces hesitation, and hesitation reduces visibility. That contractor didn't need a redesign. He needed a decision. What do we want to be known for? Once that was clear, the structure followed. And over time, the types of calls shifted too. Not because the algorithm changed, because the interpretation changed. Interpretation determines visibility. Clarity wins.
You're competing in the wrong arena. How category decisions quietly shape your competitive field.
I once worked with a contractor who called me frustrated. He said, "We're doing everything right. Reviews are solid, website looks good, but we're not showing up for the jobs we actually want." So we started digging. Reviews looked fine, the website was decent, activity was steady. Then I looked at his primary category. It was set to contractor. Technically correct, but he was an HVAC company. I asked him why he chose that category. He said, I figured contractor covers everything. That was the shift. We changed nothing else. No new reviews, no new content, no new backlinks. We simply adjusted the primary category to HVAC contractor. Within weeks, visibility patterns began shifting. Not dramatically overnight, but noticeably. Higher intent HVAC searches began surfacing more consistently. The reason wasn't magic, it was classification. Classification determines your competitive arena. AI systems don't compare every business against every other business. They compare you within structured category pools. When you choose a broad category, you widen your arena. Now you're compared against general contractors, remodelers, builders, multi-service providers. When you choose a precise category, you narrow the field. Now you're compared directly against specialists. And here's the important part. AI systems match search intent to category confidence. If someone searches emergency AC repair near me, the system looks for strong HVAC classification signals. If your primary category is broad, interpretive confidence drops. If it's precise, confidence increases. Confidence determines surfacing. Let's make this practical. Imagine two companies. Both offer furnace replacement. One is classified as HVAC contractor, the other as general contractor. Both technically do the work, but one is structurally aligned with furnace-related intent. The other is broadly positioned. The broader one competes broadly, and broad competition dilutes visibility for specific intent. Generic profiles compete for generic jobs. Most contractors treat categories as a formality. They set them once and forget them. But classification is not cosmetic. It's structural. It tells the AI system, this is where I belong. If you're placed in the wrong arena, you can do everything else right and still struggle to surface for high-value searches. The contractor I mentioned didn't change his business. He didn't change his service mix. He clarified his classification, and that clarity reduced interpretive hesitation. AI models aren't guessing what you are, they're modeling what you reinforce. Small category choices create large visibility consequences. If you categorize broadly, you compete broadly, and broad competition rarely produces specialized opportunity. Classification determines your arena, and your arena determines what you're seen for.
Reinforcement is not an accident. Why offering a service isn't the same as reinforcing it.
I once worked with a plumbing contractor who told me, we do emergency water heater replacements all the time. That's one of our best jobs. But we're not getting as many of those calls lately. So I asked him a simple question. Where does that show up? He said, what do you mean? I said, where does it show up consistently? On your website, in your reviews, in your responses, in your posts? He paused. Because offering a service is not the same thing as reinforcing it. AI systems don't model what you can do. They model what you consistently demonstrate. We pulled up his reviews. Plenty of 5-star ratings, strong reputation. But the language looked like this. Great service, very professional, highly recommend, on time and fair price. All positive, all trustworthy, but very few reviews mentioned water heater replacement emergency service, same-day installs, specific neighborhoods. From an AI interpretation standpoint, the pattern was weak. The system didn't see repeated reinforcement of emergency water heater work, so it built a broader model. Professional plumbing company, reliable, general service provider. Not wrong, just broad. And broad interpretation leads to broad visibility. Generic profiles compete for generic jobs. Now contrast that with another plumbing company. Similar review count, similar rating. But their reviews repeatedly mentioned, replaced our water heater the same day, emergency leak in South Salem, after-hours service when our tank failed. That repetition builds confidence. AI models learn from patterns. If a service is mentioned consistently, the system strengthens that association. If a location is mentioned repeatedly, geographic confidence increases. If a problem type appears over and over, specialization sharpens. Now here's the important distinction. You cannot script reviews. You shouldn't. But you can guide clarity. Instead of asking, "Can you leave us a review?" you can say, "If you're comfortable, it helps when customers mention the type of work we completed." That's not manipulation, that's context. Customers don't think in specialization language. They think in experience language. Nice guys, good price, friendly, all valuable, but generic. If you want to surface for emergency water heater replacement, that language needs reinforcement. Because AI doesn't assume what you specialize in. It predicts based on repetition. Repetition builds interpretive confidence. Confidence determines surfacing. That contractor didn't change his service mix, he changed awareness. He started guiding context gently. He started reinforcing service types in responses. Over time, the pattern shifted, and so did the types of calls. Not overnight, but steadily. Because reinforcement is not accidental, it's structural. And when you don't reinforce intentionally, the system defaults to broad interpretation. Generic profiles compete for generic jobs.
Polite is not the same as aligned. How response language strengthens or weakens interpretation.
I once worked with a contractor who was proud of one thing in particular. He responded to every single review, didn't miss one. 5 stars, 4 stars, didn't matter. He believed that consistency alone was giving him an edge. And in a way, it was. But when we looked at the responses closely, something stood out. Almost every reply sounded like this. "Thanks for the kind words. Appreciate your business. Glad we could help." Polite, professional, consistent, but structurally weak. He was responding, he just wasn't reinforcing. AI systems don't just analyze what customers say, they analyze what you say back. They look for repetition, alignment, signal stacking. Let me show you the difference. Customer review. "Great company, fixed our AC quickly." Typical response. "Thanks for choosing us." Aligned response. "Thank you for trusting us with your AC repair in South Salem. We're glad we could get your system running quickly." Notice what changed. AC repair reinforced. Location reinforced. Service outcome reinforced. Not robotic, not stuffed, aligned. Here's another example. Customer review. "They replaced our roof after the storm. Highly recommend." Typical response. Appreciate the review. Aligned response. Thank you for allowing us to complete your storm-related roof replacement. We're glad we could restore your home quickly. Now the system sees storm damage, roof replacement, home restoration. Patterns strengthen, confidence increases, and confidence determines surfacing. Most contractors think responding is about courtesy, and it is, but it's also structural reinforcement. Every response is an opportunity to stack signals. If a review mentions a neighborhood and you reinforce it naturally, geographic confidence builds. If a review mentions a specific service and you echo it clearly, specialization sharpens. When reviews and responses align, the interpretive model strengthens. When responses are generic, reinforcement weakens. Generic responses create generic signal strength. Generic profiles compete for generic jobs. The contractor I mentioned didn't need to respond more. He needed to respond differently. Short, natural, aligned. Over time, those microsignals compound. AI systems don't evaluate a single response. They evaluate patterns across dozens. Small alignment repeated consistently becomes structural strength. Polite is good. Aligned is powerful. And alignment determines what you're confidently surfaced for.
Static profiles slowly drift. Why ongoing activity reinforces specialization over time.
I once worked with a contractor who told me, "We updated everything last year. Website's good, profile looks solid, reviews are strong, we're set." And technically, he wasn't wrong. Everything was accurate. But when I looked at his profile activity, something stood out. Nothing had reinforced his specialization in months. The profile wasn't broken, it was static. And static profiles slowly drift. AI systems don't just interpret what you said once, they weigh patterns over time. They look at recent reinforcement. They evaluate whether your specialization is current or historical. If your strongest signals are old, your interpretive model can gradually broaden. Not because you did something wrong, because reinforcement faded. Now let's be clear, this is not about posting constantly. It's about reinforcing intentionally. Imagine a roofing company that wants more storm restoration jobs. If, over time, their activity includes before and after storm repair photos, short written summaries explaining wind damage, occasional updates about insurance-related roof work, customer reviews mentioning storm response. That repetition strengthens interpretive confidence. Now compare that to activity that feels random. Holiday greetings, general call us today messages, unlabeled job photos with no context. There's movement, but no pattern. AI systems don't reward motion, they reward reinforcement. This is where video can help, but only as part of alignment. It doesn't need to be complex. It might be a short explanation of a recent furnace replacement, a quick before and after walkthrough, a simple slideshow recap with captions describing the job, reading a customer review and briefly explaining the work behind it. The goal isn't production quality, it's signal layering. When your spoken language, captions, and visuals consistently reference the types of jobs you want more of, the interpretive model strengthens. Photos do this. Written job summaries do this. Aligned posts do this. Video simply adds another layer. The key is consistency. If months go by without reinforcing your specialization, your model doesn't disappear, it just weakens. And weakened reinforcement increases interpretive hesitation. Hesitation reduces visibility. You don't need to become a content creator, you need to stay aligned. AI systems aren't just reading your profile, they're observing it over time. Ongoing reinforcement keeps your specialization sharp. Generic activity reinforces nothing, and generic profiles compete for generic jobs.
When the web describes you differently, how inconsistent listings quietly weaken interpretation.
I once worked with a contractor who told me, "We've cleaned up everything. Website is solid, profile looks good, reviews are strong. I don't see any weak spots." And honestly, from the surface, he was right. But when we searched his business name and started clicking through directories, something interesting showed up. On one platform, he was listed as a general contractor. On another, he was categorized under home services. On another, the description mentioned remodeling, even though that wasn't his primary focus anymore. None of it was wildly inaccurate, but none of it was aligned. And that's where the quiet weakening happens. AI systems don't interpret your business in isolation. They cross-reference, they compare, they look for consistency across your website, your Google business profile, industry directories, local listings, associations, mentions across the web. They're asking, does the web describe this business the same way everywhere, or does it vary? When descriptions align, interpretive confidence increases. When descriptions vary, ambiguity increases, and ambiguity widens your model. Generic ecosystems produce generic interpretation, and generic profiles compete for generic jobs. Now, here's what makes this subtle. Most contractors think of directories as outdated, just listings, just citations, just name, address, phone number. And yes, data accuracy matters. But description alignment matters just as much. If your website reinforces emergency HVAC repair, but a major directory describes you as residential contractor, the model absorbs both. If your profile emphasizes storm restoration, but other listings categorize you broadly under construction, the signals conflict. Not dramatically, but structurally. AI models look for corroboration. If 5 different sources reinforce the same specialization, confidence sharpens. If those sources describe you differently, the model broadens. Now, layer in social platforms. If your profile reinforces roofing specialization, but your social media mixes remodeling, handyman work, and unrelated posts, that weakens echo. You don't need to be everywhere. You need to be aligned where you are. AI isn't looking for volume. It's looking for confirmation. The contractor I mentioned didn't need more listings. He needed consistency. We aligned categories, adjusted descriptions, reinforced specialization across key platforms. Nothing flashy, just clarity. And over time, the model stabilized. Because the web started telling the same story everywhere. You are not just building a profile, you are building an ecosystem. And ecosystems either reinforce clarity or dilute it. Misalignment compounds. Alignment compounds too. And the story the web tells about you determines what you're confidently surfaced for.
The visibility illusion. Why ranking fluctuations often reflect structure, not the algorithm.
I once worked with a contractor who called me frustrated. He said, "Nothing changed. We didn't touch the website. Reviews are steady, but our rankings dropped this week. What happened?" So we looked. Grid reports, map positions, keyword snapshots. Sure enough, there were shifts. Some areas down, some areas up, a few stable. He kept saying, "I don't get it. We didn't change anything." And that was the key. He didn't change anything. Most contractors track visibility using surface metrics, ranking reports, map grids, position screenshots. Those tools show you where you appear at a specific moment, but they don't show you why. They don't measure interpretive confidence. They measure output. Ranking is an output. Clarity is the input. This is where the illusion forms. You assume that if rankings fluctuate, something external changed. Sometimes that's true, but often interpretive weighting shifts. AI models constantly reevaluate signals. They compare reinforcement strength, classification clarity, recent activity, external alignment. If your structure is strong, visibility stabilizes. If your structure is mixed, visibility fluctuates. Let me explain that simply. Two HVAC companies rank similarly for AC repair. On the surface, they look equal, but one has tight reinforcement patterns, aligned categories, consistent activity, strong ecosystem echo. The other is broader, mixed signals, older reinforcement, generic responses. Today, they might look similar, but when intent narrows, when someone searches for emergency AC repair near me, the structurally aligned business surfaces more confidently. When interpretive weighting shifts, the broader business experiences volatility. Volatility feels random, but it's structural sensitivity. Ranking tools don't show structural strength, they show position snapshots. You can have green squares and weak alignment. You can rank broadly but disappear for specific high-intent searches. That's the illusion. You think visibility is about movement, but it's about confidence. AI systems aren't just asking, where should this business appear? They're asking, how confidently does this business match this intent? Confidence determines surfacing, and confidence is built from alignment. If your rankings fluctuate week to week, ask a different question. Not, what changed, but, how tight is my interpretive model? AI doesn't reward surface optimization. It rewards structural clarity. If you want stability, you don't stare at the grid. You strengthen alignment. When definition, classification, reinforcement, activity, and ecosystem echo all align, position becomes more resilient. Not perfect, but predictable. And predictable visibility is far more powerful than temporary spikes.
Alignment becomes leverage when structure compounds into advantage.
I once worked with a contractor who said something interesting after we had cleaned up his structure. He said, "It feels different now. Not dramatic, just clearer." That's the right word. Clearer. Not louder, not busier, not more complicated. Clearer. Because none of the individual changes we made were revolutionary. We didn't invent new services. We didn't chase hacks. We didn't manipulate anything. We aligned. Website definition, category precision, review reinforcement, response language, ongoing activity, external consistency. Individually, each one matters, but together they compound. That's the part most businesses miss. AI systems don't reward isolated tactics. They reward pattern strength, and pattern strength comes from alignment. When your website reinforces the same specialization your reviews mention, when your categories match your highest value intent, when your responses echo what customers describe, when your activity supports the same focus over time, when the broader web tells the same story everywhere, interpretation sharpens. And when interpretation sharpens, surfacing stabilizes. Confidence increases. Not just in the system, in your positioning. You stop chasing fluctuations. You stop obsessing over short-term grid movement. You stop reacting emotionally to weekly ranking shifts, because you understand what actually drives visibility: structure, clarity, reinforcement. Here's the truth. Most businesses operate in a constant state of slight misalignment. Nothing is broken, but nothing is tight. And loose structure produces loose positioning. Generic profiles compete for generic jobs. Aligned profiles compete for specific intent. And specific intent is where margin lives. That's leverage. Not tricks, not loopholes, not constant tweaking, leverage. Because when everything reinforces the same message, the system doesn't hesitate. And hesitation is what kills visibility. You don't need to outspend competitors. You don't need to outpost them. You don't need to out-review them. You need to out-align them. AI interpretation isn't something to fear. It's something to structure for. Because clarity compounds. Alignment compounds. And over time, structure becomes advantage. That's the shift. That's the leverage. And in an AI-driven search world, clarity wins.